This week's episode of the And She Looked Up podcast is brought to you by Fine Lime Illustrations. If you love quirky, colorful art transformed into fun, handmade stationery items, pretty much guaranteed to brighten somebody's day, that's just what you'll find in my new online shop at finelimeillustrations.com. That's fine as in I'm fine, lime as in the fruit, illustrations.com. Browse the entire collection or sign up for my email list to see some behind-the-scenes peeks into my studio. You'll also get first notice of new product launches and subscriber-only sales. And as an added little bonus, you'll also receive a free coloring sheet to help you relax and de-stress from your day. And now, on with the show. Welcome to the And She Looked Up podcast. Each week, we sit down with inspiring Canadian women who create for a living. We talk about their creative journeys and their best business tips, as well as the creative and business mindset issues all creative entrepreneurs struggle with. I'm your host, Melissa Hartfield, and after leaving a 20-year career in corporate retail, I've been happily self-employed for 12 years. I'm a graphic designer, an illustrator, and a multi-six-figure-a-year entrepreneur in the digital content space. This podcast is for the artists, the makers, and the creatives who want to find a way to make a living doing what they love. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the And She Looked Up podcast. As always, I am your host, Melissa, and before we dive into this week's episode, which I'm really looking forward to, I just want to remind you all that you can now become a monthly patron of the show through our hosting platform, Buzzsprout, with a small monthly sponsorship of just $3. You can help us offset the cost of running, hosting, and producing the And She Looked Up podcast, which helps us to ensure that we can continue to create great content for Canadian women who create for a living. So I will have a link to where you can sponsor the show in the show notes, along with more information for those of you who are interested. So now on to this week's episode. My guest today is Stefanie Henderlin of Mangata Apothecary. Welcome to the show, Stefanie.
Oh, thank you so much. Super excited to be here.
It's great to have you here. Stefanie and I just found out we both live in the same small town outside of Vancouver. So she is my first neighbor, in quotation marks, on the show. And it's always nice to get to connect with another local business owner. So in this week's episode, we're going to be learning more about how Stefanie creates for a living, but we're also going to be talking a bit about failure, which I think is something that all creatives fear or struggle with or worry about. And we're going to be talking about how it can actually open doors for us and contribute in a positive way to our businesses and our lives. So before we get into all that juicy stuff, let's get to know Stefanie a little bit better. She is a former midwife and the founder and CEO of Mangata Apothecary. She started formulating her products with a focus on her midwife. Is it midwifery or midwifery, Stefanie?
Yeah, midwifery.
Midwifery clients. But after becoming pregnant, she redirected her passion to helping families discover how they can take care of their own bodies and utilize herbs. She is now bringing botanicals back to her generation through her brand of 23 health and wellness products that are clean and cruelty-free, all the while juggling the life of a stay-at-home mom, like so many of you out there are. So, Stefanie, the first question I ask everyone who comes on the show is, did you feel like you were creative as a kid?
I felt like I was artistic and I knew I was a dreamer, but I didn't think I'd be creating formulations like products. I had a passion. I grew up on a dairy farm, so I had a passion for animals and everything outdoorsy. But yeah, I didn't know. I knew I was artistic, but I didn't know how that would turn out in the future.
I think that's true for a lot of us. Were you here? Were you on a dairy farm here in Delta, or was it somewhere?
No, I grew up in Smithers, northern BC.
Oh, okay.
Great place.
Yes. I have a friend who grew up in Smithers, so that's kind of cool. So you started out in Smithers, you started out on a dairy farm. So tell us a little bit about how you went from a dairy farm in Smithers to becoming essentially a product formulator here in the Lower Mainland. And you were a midwife in there as
Oh,
well. So
yeah. I'm not sure if I would vouch for this kind of life for my kids. I want them to be more focused, but as artistic dreamers usually are, they kind of find their own path. So yeah, I wanted just to get married and be on the dairy farm. That was kind of what you do in a small town. So that's what I wanted. But lo and behold, no one wanted to marry me and take over the dairy farm. So I started to look into other options, and I've always had a heart for helping people. And so I began to think about going overseas and doing that. And that led to me taking a degree in intercultural studies, which I finished, and then thought, you know what? It's great to have this skill to be able to work in different cultures, but what can I give to these cultures? So that led to my midwifery. And I actually studied quite a convoluted route. I did some time in the Philippines, I did some time in India, and then I did some time in the Lower Mainland. And then finally, I took all of those little chunks and applied them to a bachelor degree, which I did out of Portland, Oregon. So, like I said, it's convoluted. But I came back to Vancouver after I finished the midwifery degree and thought, okay, now I'm going to go overseas and use this. But I met someone. And so then once again, like I thought, how am I going to do this? And we kind of determined, well, we can't be living overseas. He was a contractor here in Vancouver. And that's when I began looking into getting everything transferred to Canada finally. But once again, in the process of that course, I was living in Toronto, came home for 1 week and got pregnant. So it was either raise my baby in Toronto for a year without my husband or drop out of the program. And that's what I did. And yeah, and then I remember just I might be getting ahead of us. Go ahead and slow me down if you think.
no, it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so chose to drop out of that program, and then I was literally sitting on the couch one day, pregnant with all those pregnancy hormones, and my husband could tell I was like quite depressed or just like discouraged, you know. And he said to me, well, you've got all these products. Why don't you try to sell them? Because he's an entrepreneur. That had never occurred to me. I just kind of thought like I've put like 8 years of my life into these 2 degrees. I had this passion to do something. Now everything has changed. What am I going to do with my life? And I just felt really discouraged. Like I had wasted all that time, all that effort. And he said, no, you know, these products inside and out, they work. You've tried them on your clients. Like, why don't you try and sell them? And so that's how Mangata Apothecary was formed. And it's kind of been a learning process from there because my background's medicine, you know, it's not business.
Yeah, well, yeah. So let's see. So you had already started formulating products before you even thought about having a product-based business, because that's something I'm always super curious about, because product formulation and anything that is in the health and wellness realm or the skincare realm or anything like that, it's a tricky business to get into. It's not just about formulating the products, it's making sure they're safe to sell and all of that. So how did you even figure that out? Because I think that scares a lot of people. I think a lot of people have that idea in their head, but they're like, oh, I don't know how to do that. I wouldn't know where to even start. So how did that come about?
Yeah, well, I had to take some courses in herbalism and aromatherapy and a lot of alternative medicine for my midwifery degree. And so as part of those courses, we had to create products.
Oh, really?
I
Interesting.
realized during the process, I loved it. This was so fun. This was so cool. And when I tried it on my clients, obviously, we tried it on ourselves first. And it's not like I'm putting chemicals on their bodies. It's all natural. But then they started to give me feedback and they'd be like, wow, I really love this. This is really effective. And so in the back of my mind, while I'm finishing my degree, I thought, I really wish I had more time just to devote on playing around and making things. And so that's actually what happened when I graduated with my degree. I was waiting to go into the Canadian bridging program, and I had all this time on my hands for once. And so that's when I started really nailing down the formulations, what works, what doesn't work, expanding my repertoire and adding more different products. And at that time, I started to look into how would this work as a business. So
Right.
this was all before I even went to the bridging program, which I
Before
had to
you
drop out of.
got pregnant and
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. I had already started thinking maybe one day I'll sell this, maybe I'll start a business. Um, and at that point, what I did do is I reached out to people that I saw on Instagram that were already doing it, like
Hmm.
professional brands, not like high end like L'Oreal, but like local businesses. And it was quite surprising how willing they were to help me. So like with each formulation, you need to submit it to Health Canada. I had no idea about that. So when I reached out to these people, they kind of gave me a quick email synopsis. These are the steps to take when you're making formulations, and just these are a few resources. I found some really great female entrepreneur resources. There's a lot of people out there that actually help female entrepreneurs. And yeah, that's kind of how it started. So I did the groundwork before I ever went to the bridging program.
Okay. And so the bridging program was basically what allows you to take your qualifications that you got in Oregon and transfer them over
Exactly.
to be able to practice in Canada.
That's right.
But that never happened.
I know. Yeah.
So, one of the things we were going to talk about today was failure. And you had mentioned to me before we even started recording the episode that your business was kind of born out of failure. And that sounds kind of harsh, but you've told us a little bit about what happened there. But so when you found out you were pregnant, did you just what was it that made you feel like you couldn't keep going as a midwife and instead you had to do something else?
Totally. Well, like I said, I had taken my training in a very convoluted route.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't all like, I would really encourage my children not to do it that way. If they want to be a midwife, just stick it out in Canada. If you want to practice in Canada, try and get into the Canadian bridging program. But like I said, dreamers are kind of floaters, and I definitely was a floater. And I thought, I ain't waiting in line for this UBC or Toronto program. So that's why I did what I did. I went to the Philippines and then I went to India, and I don't regret it. It was amazing. And even working in Portland, they have birth centers in Portland that are like literal homes in the country where the midwives work out of. Like, we have birth centers in Canada, very few, but it's in the downtown core. And I
Mm-hmm.
actually, in my bridging program, got to experience a birth center in Toronto, but it's nothing like what I trained in,
Right.
which was kind of the problem. I had no idea, but when I went into the bridging program, they accepted me, which was great. You had to present all your training and all your qualifications. And the bridging program is for people that are internationally trained, like myself.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a huge step for someone who just graduated. And like, I had never practiced as a midwife. I had just graduated. I did all my qualifications. Most of these women are from different countries like India or Tanzania, and they've practiced for years.
Right.
So this lady has put together a bridging program to help them get the same job in Canada, which is amazing, because I don't know if you know much about the healthcare system, but it's very difficult. If you're a doctor in Africa coming to Canada, you're usually a housekeeper in the hospitals, like, I've met many people like that, and it's really discouraging.
My mom is actually, well, she's retired now, but she's a physician and she was trained overseas. So she's not from Canada. So she had to write all her exams at UBC. And we lived on, well, I didn't know, I didn't exist yet. She was living on the island with my dad, who was in the Air Force. And yeah, I have I have an ID picture of her from UBC that she had to have for her exams. And I was looking at the date, and I just found it like a couple of weeks ago. And I was looking at the date on it, and she was like 8 months pregnant with me when she was writing these exams to be able to practice in Canada. So, and she came from a country where the qualifications are very highly recognized in Canada. So it was a lot easier for her than it would be from some other countries, but it is a process for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, it's a lot of
Yeah.
work.
And I think it was probably even easier when she did it than it is now.
Yeah,
So
I wouldn't be
it's,
surprised.
yeah. So, so you're in this situation where you're not quite practicing yet. You were trying to get yourself transferred over to be able to work here, but you said you had this kind of winding path, but honestly, getting the opportunity to study in places like the Philippines and India and experience that's lifelong experience that you will have forever. I mean, that is not wasted by any
Totally.
stretch, right? I think,
Totally. It was
yeah.
amazing. And I mean, I married internationally. I married a Sri Lankan. And so that has helped so much with our marriage, knowing
Yeah.
intercultural studies degree, it does help. And spending time overseas, it helps.
Yeah, absolutely. It opens up your whole view of the world, I think, when you have that opportunity to travel, especially when you're younger. So not wasted at all by any stretch of the imagination. So when you found out you were pregnant and you were still in the middle of doing this, yeah, what made you decide that, okay, I'm not going to continue, but I need to figure something else out? Like, how did you feel about that, first of all? Like,
Well, there's a little bit I haven't told you yet, the
okay.
failure part of this. So I had never practiced and I had experience in different settings. And the Canadian setting for midwifery is often hospital, and you're running epidurals and you're working alongside the physicians who are doing C-sections. Those things I had not really encountered. So I
Right.
had a huge learning curve. And 5 weeks into the program, I was told that I was failing. So that was really hard pill to swallow. They gave me 2 weeks to get it together, basically. And so those 2 weeks, I was just trying so hard to absorb so much information. And I mean, at the time, I was so upset. I found out I was pregnant, but it turned into quite a blessing because I was able to exit the program on the basis of being pregnant, not on the basis of failure. So the program is still open to me to return to, you know, but yeah, so that's kind of the failure. I was at home with that, sitting there thinking like, I failed something. Like, what am I doing? Like, and now I'm pregnant. Now I have to give up my career. And it was just really hard just to try and see what to do next. And that was when my husband kind of voiced, well, you've got these great products. Let's make something out of that. And that was really cool for me to be able to turn on my creative side. Medicine is a very logical thinking, hard work side for me
Yeah.
because I am a creative. And so it was so nice. It was really beautiful just to be able to go into something that I realized I love this and I can stay home with my kids and I can do this.
Well, that's one of the key parts of being an entrepreneur, right? Is it gives you a lot of flexibility. So, but it's a big stretch from going to be a practicing midwife to starting a small business. And I think, and I don't know about your experience, but I think a lot of us start a small business without the faintest idea of what we're getting into or what it's going to entail. And I think a lot of us, if you asked us 5 or 6 years on, would probably like, if I'd known what it was going to be like, I probably wouldn't have done it. But you could have gone the route of finding a job with an employer. What made you think that might not be the right thing for you, and that starting a small business was maybe a better way to go?
Well, the truth is I took on a job at the same time. So
Okay.
I was home, I got a job, and I started pushing this as a side hustle. And then as the kids came, I've got three now. Then obviously I stopped working after the first one was born and I haven't gone back to work. But yeah, just the realization of, wow, like my husband's super supportive, but this is a lot of work. This is a lot of effort and very little fruit unless you've got like this great product that just takes off. You've got all the things lined up. You've got lots of investors or money. It's really hard to grow organically, which is what I've been forced to do just because of finances. And we're
So,
at a place now where people know about us, which is amazing,
right.
but not where we want to be at all. So
That's very honest.
yeah, no, we really want to grow. And so I've been pitching actually to so many like pitching competitions. And I mean, if I can do a little plug right here, and next weekend we're pitching to the Dragon's Den.
Yes, I saw that on your Facebook
Yeah.
page, and I was going to bring that up. So we'll get to that because I do want to hear about that. It's one of my favorite shows, so I'm really excited for you.
Thank you.
So when you decided that you were going to start a small business, so you mentioned your husband's a contractor, so he obviously has some experience with running a business, which I'm sure helped. But you, as we mentioned before, you've chosen a business that requires you to create product, and not just product, but a formulated product that has to fit, that has to be approved by Health Canada, and that has to fit in with certain guidelines that our country has. And I'm sure if you want to sell internationally, that probably opens up other places
Oh
where you
yeah,
need to be certified. So I can imagine
yeah,
this could
yeah.
be a very ongoing process for years. But
There's definitely easier businesses to start.
yes, this is where I was kind of going. I think, like I mentioned, a lot of people shy away from this. And how did you start? Like, were you cooking these up in your kitchen? Like,
Oh,
did you turn your
definitely,
kitchen into
totally.
a
Yeah, I had crock pots going and the double boiler method going.
mm-hmm.
A lot of my products are like infused balms, so you got to infuse the oils, and I had lots of herbs hanging all throughout the kitchen, drying, things like that.
So how do you, is that, I have so many questions about this. I find it so interesting. So all the herbs and things that you use, do you like, where do you get them from? How do you source them? Like this is, I see these questions come up in product groups that I'm in all the time, and people are like,
A lot of it I wildcrafted or grew myself. With baby number one, that was feasible.
right.
Baby number two, I just gave up. I thought there's no way I can lug these children out into the wilderness, or like I know moms can do it, but I couldn't. So, and honestly, I don't have a green thumb, so trying to grow them in my garden was quite discouraging. And I realized as the orders came in, I needed larger quantities of them.
Mm,
So I began to source locally in the Vancouver area. There's different places you can source different herbs. And so that's what I began to do. I got it in bulk from these different suppliers. And our essential oils come from a small business, a family run business. So I try in those kind of ways to get our products from different small suppliers. And yeah, now I don't. I mean, little things like comfrey. Comfrey is such an easy plant to grow, and it's in a few of my products, so that I will grow myself
you'll
and
still
harvest.
grow.
Yeah.
When you were looking for places to source it from, like how did you start that? Was it just a Google search or word of mouth or?
Some of the ladies that had skincare brands already from the Vancouver area, they gave me their sources, which was really
Oh,
kind.
nice.
It's not always common for competing
No.
skincare brands to help each other, but they could see I was just starting out, so they were
Mm-hmm.
very sweet. So yeah, I got some suppliers from them, and then yeah, it was a Google search and just a lot of people that were open. I would send them a message and be like, "Hey, I'm not trying to steal any formulations or anything, but I am trying to source this particular
Right.
herb. Can you help me out?" And sometimes they just ignore you, but sometimes they wouldn't.
Well, I was just going to say we had Katrina and Lexi from Gaiola on the podcast earlier in the year, and they were sort of the first guests I had on who were in a manufacturing position, which similar to what you're doing, but a very different industry. And they also mentioned how they were so shocked and pleasantly surprised by how many people they reached out to who were very generous with their time and their knowledge. And I think sometimes we think people will be, there are definitely people out there who are very protective of what they do and their sourcing, but I think sometimes we let our fear of asking get in the way of actually moving ourselves forward. But it's, I'm always
Totally,
surprised by
totally.
how few people ask for help. Like when I get an email from somebody who's pitching or something like that, it doesn't happen that often because I think most people have a fear of being rejected or being told, no, I'm not going to share that with you. So it's
Yeah, yeah.
always worth reaching out.
I've learned just to ask.
Yeah.
And
So
people, yeah, like I said, there's so many people out there that specifically, like even like Van City, the Forum in Vancouver, they're all there just for female entrepreneurs. So it's
mhm.
really encouraging.
Yeah, there's so many resources out there that I think a lot of us aren't even aware exist.
Yeah.
So the more people you can talk to, the more likely it is that you'll find what you need. So that's great. But you have mentioned you want to get to a point where you're much bigger. So do you see a point where your manufacturing process has to be done in another location or um, outside? Maybe, I don't know if you're still in your house manufacturing, but at some point do you see that you're going to have to scale up to get to where you want to go?
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things with my prep for the Dragon's Den. They want to see that you're scalable and you've looked into it. And so last year at this time, I was looking at getting everything certified as natural health products because right now they're all cosmetics, which really limits what I can claim about my products.
Mm,
And my products aren't, it's not like a face wash, a toner. No, my products are more skin balms for irritation or muscle
right.
pain. but I can't straight up say that on the labels. So it's kind of tricky and it's discouraging, but that's kind of where I'm at. And to get them certified as natural health products, then you do have to take that additional step and manufacture out of house. Right
Yeah.
now, I do it all in-house in my workshop. So I have looked into it. I've got quotes for that in case I get there. And it is in the back of my mind. But my first preference, because when you do manufacture out of house, a lot of the quotes say you need to start with 1,000 units of each item. So that's 1,000 units on my shelves that I need to move really fast. And I've got 23 products. So that's a lot of products sitting there.
23,000 units. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not there yet. Of course, I'd love to be there one day. But up until then, I think I need to I'll hire people to help with the manufacturing process. Right. That's kind of what we've looked at, and that's what we've got quotes for, and we're ready to move into that direction.
So how did you get the word out that this was what you were doing? Like when you start out as a business, particularly a product business, there's big challenges in terms of, you just alluded to it, inventory. Like it's one thing to have 10 of something on your shelf. It's another thing to have 1,000 on your shelf that you have to move. So how did you start to build the business and get yourself out there?
I went the way a lot of people go, which is markets. I didn't find they were very successful because, first of all, I didn't know what I was doing. And obviously, when you start something out, you don't have much money. And so I had made all the branding myself and all the labels myself. And so it looked like, and not to downplay farmers markets, they're very profitable for some people for sure. But it looked like what you might find at a farmer's market, if I could say kindly, like more in the countryside farmer's market. And that was what I wanted. I wanted it to be really professional, that Whole Foods would knock on my door and say, this looks great, let's put it on our shelves. So to get to that stage, I did have to do a lot of email pitching. I found quickly on that I didn't have the time for markets. And I know some entrepreneurs will say, well, then you don't have the time for a small business. But I couldn't make it work with my schedule and the kids and my husband's schedule. And so I had to find different ways to grow. And that's when I really started building my social media followers that way. And I got my e-commerce platform to look really well and get that all together properly. And then I've spent hours just pitching to retailers. I've gone to some bigger trade shows. I've kind of decided if I'm going to do markets like events, I want to do large ones. I'm going to invest in a large one. So I've gone to a few large ones, and we're going back to a really successful one. The CHFA is like the Canadian Health Food Association, but they also work with cosmetics and people like us. And so they have a huge trade show in Vancouver in about a month. So we went last year, and we're going again this year. And that's all for retailers to come through and browse. And that's been really beneficial to us because we do want to grow our e-commerce, but it's also great when we get wholesale orders from retailers. That's a big chunk of money at once. And then it's done, it's out the door. So that's really nice.
Yeah, that's a big show. My previous background is in food and drug retail, so I've been to that show many times.
Oh, very cool. I love all the samples you get from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely great for exposure as well, just to get yourself in front of the right people who are making those purchasing decisions. So good luck with that. That should be a lot of fun. But even doing that requires a significant amount of investment. I mean, you need to have your booth and all of the stuff. It's the booth you have at a trade show is different than the booth you're going to have at a farmer's market. Right? So it is a whole different level of looking professional, as you said. So that's an investment too, right there. So it's a lot of work getting a product business launched and out there and out the door. And I think a lot of people, like I said, if we knew how much work it was, we maybe question it. But once you're in the middle of it, you're in the middle of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of where you're at. You're like, do I give up, which feels like failure? Mm-hmm. Or do I change the direction? Like I've had lots of mentors make suggestions that so far we haven't followed through with them because they're not 100% sure it's the right path, and I'm not 100% sure. But like, for example, one mentor suggested I pivot and just do one product. which, I mean, some people, it's smart, right? But if you're starting out, I would tell my mentees, just choose one good product to start, you know?
Mhm.
But I didn't do it that way. And so we've kind of decided, no, that's not the path we want to go. But it's true. It is so much work, and you can get really discouraged. And if you follow along with other people, like I follow on LinkedIn, a lot of brands that I really look up to. And sometimes they're really honest and they're like, today was a bad day. And they just list all the things that went wrong. And then at the end, they're like, I felt like giving up. And I'm like, oh, like, I understand. You understand me. You know, it's just, you don't have a steady paycheck. You don't have a steady job. It's kind of up and down, and it can be very discouraging.
So how do you keep going from that? You seem like a very determined person, first of all. So, you know, when you start a small business, we all know that it is a huge learning process. And you don't just fail once, you fail pretty much every day, it feels like sometimes. So how do you deal with that without feeling completely defeated?
Um, well, right now, I mean, we've gone through a really slow month.
Mm,
And so it is, I mean, the month before that was great. And I was just like soaring high. This is great. We're doing so good. And this past month, I'm like, what's wrong? Like, why is it so slow? So it's just kind of keeping yourself in check and just realizing entrepreneur life does have its ups and downs. And I mean, I've watched my husband with his, and his is just emotionally up and
yeah.
down, because you have these great employees and then they get a better job somewhere else and they leave you and you have to start over, you know, and things like that happen to him all the time. And just watching the money too flow in, flow out. And it's just like, if I want to grow, I need to invest, but where do I get the money? And it's scary to get the money. It's scary. What if it fails? Then I'm
Yeah.
in the hole, all this money. Um, so I guess it needs to be a passion. And this definitely has formed into something that I am super passionate about. I believe in my products. They look beautiful. I
You
get a
do.
lot of good feedback. Thank you.
Your
I get
website
a
is
lot of good
lovely.
feedback. And so it's keeping an open mind. Like I said, I do have mentors, and sometimes they tell me things I don't want to hear. For instance,
Mm,
I finally landed this subscription box. That's a beautiful box. It's local, it's Canadian, they're doing great. Um, I've been pitching to them for years. I've met the owner in person twice and like pitched myself, you know, like it's like, what else can I do to get her attention? And finally she came to me and said, we'd love to have your products in our box. And I was so excited about that. And then just my mentor just put one thought into my head, and she said, maybe right now it's not financially a good idea for you. And I was like, what? You know, like, how do you give up something like that? But it's really listening to people that have gone before you. And I mean, sometimes I don't take their advice. Sometimes you got to go with your gut. But this time I took her advice. And right as soon as I said that email, like, can you follow up with me in 6 months? Now is not a good time. We're super busy. And I felt such relief, and I felt like I was like, that was the right decision. And
yeah.
even though they may never come back to me, you know, it's just choosing to follow people who have gone ahead of you. My mentor works in the health and wellness. She has her own brand too, but she's leaps and bounds ahead of me. And so
Hmm.
just trusting other people and yeah, listening to what people have to say.
How did you've mentioned that you have mentors a few times. How did you find people who were interested in being a mentor for you? Because I think that's something a lot of women are looking for and don't know how to even broach the subject.
Yeah, no, I found the forum through an Instagram ad, and the forum is a nonprofit based out of Vancouver, and their whole purpose is to help female identifying entrepreneurs. And so they were offering a course called the E-Series, and it's basically everything about starting a business. And I was, like I said, I was kind of at the beginning stages. I had no idea I didn't know about trademarking or having, like, I had an Etsy platform. And I remember setting up my Etsy and then sitting down on my couch and being like, so am I going to get an order now? And for that whole week, I kind of like just sat there on my couch whenever I had a spare moment and waited for the Etsy ka-ching noise to go, and it didn't come. And I was like, well, I put it out there. Like, what else am I supposed to do? But there's so much you have to do, you know? So yeah, the forum is this great platform that I've connected with on many different levels. And one of the things they offer people is mentorship. And it's been I mean, I think it's a small fee, but it is so worth it. You have 12 months. I meet with her once a month, and then
Oh, that's
she's so
awesome.
open, like in the opportunity to keep going after is there, and so it's been really, really beneficial.
So did they match you up with somebody who they felt would be a good fit for you?
Yeah, what they did is they actually have a whole platform, and you go on the platform and you look at people's profiles,
Right.
all these people's names, the mentors, and all the things that they're good at, like marketing, e-commerce, investing. And there's people from bankers to people that are started their own business. Yeah, just so many options, and men and women, which I really appreciated because I think
Mhm.
I learn a lot from men as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And you just kind of put in your criteria, like little buttons you click, like what are you looking for? I'm looking for investor information. I'm looking for branding information, marketing information. And then when you click on what you're looking for, then those people will populate. And so I found mine because I looked at her business. Like there was a list of people that I could choose from, but I looked at what the business was that some of them had started, and hers was a herbal tea business. And I was like, oh, like she
Yeah.
would be perfect for me. It's not so similar. It's not like another skincare line, but it's in the same natural health realm. So she really helped me. So I chose her and she agreed, and then we've been meeting. It's been great.
Oh, that's really cool. I'm going to put a link to that, everybody, in the show notes because I've never heard of the forum before, but I'm going to go check them out after we
Oh,
finish.
they're really growing because people are really learning about all their resources. They've got a money moves course too about finding money for your business,
Oh,
and
that's really cool.
it's been
Awesome.
so helpful.
So, did you start out? We're not going to dive deep into your financials or anything like that, but did you start out bootstrapped? Is that essentially what you did? Kind of like,
I started out with my husband saying, "Here's $2,000, create a website and get some labels." And if he wouldn't have done that, I would have I don't know if I could have started. So
right.
yeah, that's been how it's growing. I did get a line of credit under the company name when I incorporated, and that's
Mhm.
been super helpful.
Right.
And then we found a bit of grant funding through the Canadian government, Venture for Canada. We were able to hire someone for a time. That was
Okay.
really helpful. And right now, actually, there's this platform called Ripen, and they have a program called Level Up, and you can hire someone, a student. That's the whole idea. You hire a student for 80 hours, and the government pays them directly for those 80 hours of work. You
Okay.
just have a project that they need to work on and then show you that they've completed it. And that has been so helpful. Like,
Yeah, I have a friend who's looking for somebody, a student specifically, to help her in her business right now with a project, and I'm going to tell her about this
yeah,
as
Venture
soon
for
as we're
Canada
done.
is also students. So you have to hire a student. So tell her about Venture for Canada. I think they
Okay.
subsidize 50% of the income if you go through them.
Yeah, that is great. Some really good resources here. Thank you.
And I found them
Um,
all before them.
um, yeah, I'd love to do an episode on grant applications and with somebody who helps people write grants or something like that, because I think it's a very underutilized tool that's accessible to particularly us as women. I think there's a lot of um, money out there that we don't even realize is
Yeah.
there for us if we're willing to take the time to put in an application and sit down and think about it. So yeah, very cool resources. So at this point though, you are looking to grow and you're looking to, I mean, if you want to go on Dragon's Den, you're obviously looking for investors.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
tell us a little bit about how you got into, you're at the point with Dragon's Den where you're going to
We're doing
um
the audition for the producers. So we're not
right, so
making
you're not
grants.
on the show
No,
yet.
we're going downtown Vancouver, and we're doing as if we're in front of the dragons, but in front of the producers. And if they like it, then we get to go to the show.
What made you decide that you wanted to go on Dragon's Den? That's because you're that's some hard hitting questions.
You know what? I got to the point in my business where I was like, I need to apply for every grant, every pitch competition. Like, if I want to grow, I need to get moving. So I just started applying. And like I said, some of the people that I follow on LinkedIn and Instagram, they're brands that are doing way better than me. They started pitching and getting on the Dragon's Den. And I was like, you know what? I could just apply. So I found the online application and I applied last year and got to do a virtual pitch because they weren't doing it in person at that time. So
Right,
I did a
yeah.
virtual pitch last year, but I had so much work to do for that pitch. and I was not ready. So I didn't obviously proceed to the actual show. And so, and I think I have an addiction to online application forms because give me a grant application or a pitch application, and it's like I have to fill it out. So when I saw that Dragon's Den was open again, I said, you know what, I'm going to try it again. And this time they phoned me and they said, we'd like you to audition in person. And so that's kind of how I got to where I'm going. And you know what? I was very honest in my application about the stage of my business. And it's easy to discredit yourself and think, oh, so and so pitched to the Dragons. They're so much further than me. I'll never get there. But I've changed my attitude. And I just think, you know what? Let's just give it a shot. Let's try. And the only way you grow is if by trying, right? Like the first pitch competition I got into, I know I was the worst pitcher in that competition. These people were good, but I either they only had 5 people apply, and so they needed to fill all 5 slots, right. Or maybe they saw something in me, you know. But it's you got to start somewhere, and so I just filled out the application for Dragon's Den again last fall, and was super excited when they called me a couple of weeks ago.
Well, you know, something like that, even if you don't make it to the actual show, the process of going through that, I would imagine it really forces you to know your business, know your I mean, they are big on numbers on Dragon's Den. So it forces you to really confront those big number questions that sometimes
and ask the questions like, why would the Dragons want to be involved with me? You know, like last year when they invited me to audition, I was shocked. I was like, what? Do I really have a business that's investable? But obviously I didn't lie on my application. So they do see potential if they're asking you for an audition. And so, yeah, like I'm not huge, like by any means, but I've got the passion, I've got beautiful products. And what I'm really looking for with the Dragons is that help with marketing. You know, up until now, it's been all bootstrapped, and any free collaboration I can do, I do, because that's kind of the stage that you got to start with, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was going to ask you which dragon you're hoping for, but maybe I won't ask you that and just.
But wait and see. No. Right now we're really working on our e-commerce, growing our e-commerce. So that kind of leads me to Michelle. But I think everyone has sometimes the Dragons kind of get stuck in their little category, but then you'll see them offering different things, and they'll say like, I've got a lot of experience in this realm, and I'm like, oh, I had no idea. So you almost have to spend time studying each of the Dragons to figure out who you really want.
You do. And I always love it when they decide to collaborate and go in, so you get multiple dragons on your deal, and that always is really cool. So well, I'm rooting for you. I hope it works out, because that would be really exciting. So that's really exciting to look forward to. And I know I've seen you online. I know that we are both part of the North Delta artisan market, actually. Okay. So I've seen you pitching for some or looking for some support in some other pitches that you've done. So it's something that you are not afraid to do. And I think it is something that so maybe this plays into the whole failure thing, but I think a lot of us shy away from those things because they are work. They're a lot of work to do them, right? You know, you need to get out there and you need to market yourself and you need to know your numbers and all that stuff. But at the same time, I think a lot of us shy away from them because we're afraid somebody will say no. But you seem to have gotten through that. You're just like, you know what, I'm just going to apply for them all and see what happens. So how do you kind of, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for here? You've managed to kind of get through that.
Yeah. You know what? I've always been like a small town kid. And people would tell me when I came to school, you stink like farm poo. And I mean, they're not trying to be hurtful, but they are in a way, you know? So ever since a young kid, you kind of grow up with a stigma. And I've learned just to you know what, be proud of it. I love the farm. I can't get away from the smell. That's what we do. And I remember my brother one day for Farmer's Day came to school dressed in his full-on boots and coveralls that were covered in farm poo, and he wore it proud. And that was kind of the attitude that us kids kind of had to take on, is you can either get all down and sad and, oh, people don't like me, or you can just live it. And so I've learned to just be myself. And even in different groups, you know, as moms, they can turn it, you feel like you go back to high school and people are really cliquey. You're standing in the preschool line to drop off your kid and there's a cool mom there. And it's been interesting seeing the emotions that go on through you, but I've just decided, you know what, this is who I am. I'm not going to be ashamed of it. And so you just talk to people, and people, maybe you talk to the cool mom and she doesn't even look at you, and you can take that like really, oh my goodness. Or you can just be like, whatever. And so that's kind of turned into my attitude with my business too, is just be yourself, just be confident in who you are. Like, you really need to know who you are and what you love and what your product or your business is. And you do need to get outside advice. And so I feel like I've got some outside advice, and I feel confident enough based on what other people are saying that I can step out there and be like, this is an amazing product. This is the price I'm asking, and no, I'm not going to give you a discount, and no, I'm not going to sit here and explain to you why the price is so high in your opinion. You know, like, there's so many people that can come at you and just say things that can really discourage you. But if you're confident in the whys behind what you're doing and you've got that passion, I think that's kind of how you move forward. And so that's kind of the attitude I've taken. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this. And sure, things might not work out, but if you just keep trying, you figure out what is working. And I think just being asked to audition for Dragon's Den is just, it's been confirmation that I'm on the right track. You know, if I was honest in my application and they're saying, come on in and show us what you got, that says it all, really.
Yeah, it's validation. And I think you make a really good point there. We do need to get outside of ourselves. We need to get outside of our businesses. We need to get outside of our homes and actually seek out other people that we can connect with who are either steps ahead of us or in it with us or whatever. But if you're not able to get that outside validation, you can get so stuck in your little world, and that can be damaging almost, because you get so wrapped up in your head. And that's when you can start to doubt yourself and think that I mean, we all doubt ourselves at different points, but when you've got that group of people who are helping nurture you along and who are showing you that, yes, you can do this, it does help your confidence, and it does help you realize that, yeah, I have something here and it's worth it, and I can keep going with it. And then to get the validation from something like Dragon's Den, or even like a grant acceptance, you know, that's the government saying, hey, yeah, this is cool what you're doing. We're going to give you some money so you can keep doing it because we think there's potential here. So I think that's really important.
I remember last year at this time when I got the invite to Dragon's Den, I was so shocked. I looked at my husband, I said, are they going to like put me on the show to make fun of me? Am I like one of those funny companies that is like the entertainment, you know? So
I'm pretty sure, even after just talking to you for 45 minutes, that I can say no.
this year I feel way better about it. But last year I was so shocked they actually invited me. I was like, what is their motivation behind this?
No, I think you're good. So I was going to ask you what's next for your business. So obviously Dragon's Den is something that you are working towards, but what else do you see happening?
Yeah, we got a broker signed on with us, so that's really exciting because that'll help us. We're really focusing on getting into natural food stores. We're in Finlandia on West Broadway, which is a nice big natural food store. And there's we're starting to get into some alternative health practices. We got into Mind Body Shen, which is an acupuncturist doctor in Surrey. So that's kind of the direction we're going right now, and we're really excited about that. We're also going to be at the CHFA trade show under our broker's heading.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so we'll be there, and we're excited about that. And yeah, like I said, we're going to really work on growing our e-commerce this year. That's our main goal, is to get that e-commerce website really up to par and get it going.
Right. Yeah. Very cool. And so for those who would like to find you, where can we find you? Tell us your e-commerce store so people can go check it out.
It's www.mangataapothecary.ca, not com, ca. Okay. And you can email me any questions, hello@mangataapothecary.com. We're on Instagram @mangataapothecary. We're on TikTok @mangataapothecary Inc., I believe. And what else? Facebook, obviously, Mangata Apothecary. LinkedIn, you can find us. Yeah, those are our main social platforms.
Okay. And we will put links to all of that in the show notes for those of you who are wanting to check out Stefanie's online store and also her social. You can connect with her on there. And you also have an ebook called Eating Weeds that is available free for those who want to sign up for your newsletter. And maybe just tell us a little bit about what's in that book that they can get from you.
Totally. That book is like all my passion shoved into 31 pages. So the course I took in midwifery, herbalism, was so impactful on me. I just thought it's mind blowing that people, like, the one herb that stuck out to me is a dandelion. And, you know, we always think dandelions are weeds. And that's why I called the book Eating Weeds, not cannabis. Don't get it mixed up with cannabis, but eating weeds, because we see dandelions in particular as weeds. And my passion, when I realized that dandelions were actually medicinal and they had so many benefits to people if you would actually eat them or make tinctures with them or infusions with them, I just thought dandelions are in everyone's yards and everyone sees them as a pest, and yet it's medicine. And here we are discrediting it. We don't even know it's medicine, you know? And I didn't grow up knowing that it's medicine. And so it was really impactful, but also irritating to me that no one had told me a dandelion had medicine. And so the whole book's premise is getting people that have the same situation as me, had no idea or want to learn. And it gives you how to start your own herbal apothecary. Gives you like a list, just an easy list of things you have in your own kitchen that you need. And then it goes into the basics of herbalism, really simple. And then it has, I think, about 30 formulations in there. And some of the formulations are very similar to my products. So if you like one of my products, but you don't want to buy it, you want to make it, like, just find the similar product and make it out of the book. And yeah, that ebook is totally free. If you just sign up for the newsletter, you can download it for free. And I mean, the newsletter it's just us sharing our interests and sharing things with you. So it's not like, oh my goodness, I'm going to get so much spam. We send out an email maybe once every 2 weeks or so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That is great. So yes, you can get your own copy of Eating Weeds, all for the price of your email address. It sounds like a very good deal to me. So thank you so much for being on the show this week, Stefanie. It was really great to get to chat with you and learn a little bit more about your business and what you're doing. And I wish you a ton of luck with your Dragon's Den edition. That sounds very cool. And you'll have to let us know how it works out, because
totally.
We'll definitely.
You'll know if you follow me on the social. I am not going to be shy.
Yeah, definitely. Are you going to try and document it in any way with your phone, or like
my
what
husband is coming, so I need to get him to help with that. I'm gonna have my kid and my husband, so we'll see how that goes. But
you have to turn him into an Instagram husband.
Totally.
Yeah, that's very exciting. So I hope that goes well for you. And yeah, thank you so much for being on the show with us this week. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you for hosting me.
All right, everybody. That is it for this week. We'll be back in another 2 weeks with another brand new episode, and we will talk to you all then. Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. If you're looking for links or resources mentioned in this episode, you can find detailed show notes on our website at andshелookedup.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter for more business tips, profiles of inspiring Canadian creative women, and so much more. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the show via your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. We always love to hear from you, so we'd love it if you'd leave us a review through iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Drop us a note via our website at andshелookedup.com, or come say hi on Instagram at andshелookedup. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.